Welcome back to the second hour of our program. Our quote for the day from Thomas Jefferson: "I sincerely believe the banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies." Carrie Lucas is on the line with us. She is the Vice President of Policy and Economics at the Independent Women's Forum, IWF.org, the website. Carrie, welcome to the show. Oh, hang on. I'm sorry, Carrie. I'm so used to somebody else putting you on the air. Now I have to do it myself, and I forgot to push the button. Hi.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I'll just reiterate my thank you for having me on, as always.
IWF.org, the website. You wrote a piece for townhall.com. I'm assuming it's also posted over at IWF.
Yeah.
And this is titled, "Rush Doesn't Need to Win Women, but Conservatives Do." And there's a couple things in here that I found really interesting and I wanted to speak with you about. First of all, you start out by pointing out that women, particularly political independents, don't like Rush Limbaugh. You know, the polls are showing that, by and large, women don't like Rush. But conservatives need women if they're going to win elections. And so you wrap the story up, the very last sentence, in fact, you say we need a more tailored pitch, that is, to women. Conservatives do. In the middle of the story, you talk about how Ted Kennedy commissioned a poll, or highlighted a poll, probably commissioned by somebody else, that showed that not only are women more worried about the economy, but that when the economy goes in the tank, it's women who are more disproportionately negatively affected than men. All those things being the case, how can conservatives who support there not being a social safety net to catch people as they fall through when the economy goes through the cycles that economies inevitably go through, how can conservatives possibly tailor their message to women?
Well, two things I want to clarify, because the Ted Kennedy thing was kind of interesting because he was using, it's actually, I think, really hard to say that in this current recession that women have been affected worse than men have. In fact, I believe it's about 80% of job losses have incurred of men are the ones who are out of work, and that's why women are soon going to be the majority of workers in the United States. But, I don't think this matters. I think that, it's not good news for women if men are losing their jobs, and women who are now working as the sole supporters of their family certainly don't feel like they've been spared from this recession.
Well, and there's a bigger piece to that, too, which is that women are more likely to live in poverty. Women are more likely to, even if they're in the workforce, they're more likely to be working at lower wage jobs.
Sure.
And so women do
absolutely, and women are
get
more
hit
likely
pretty
to be
hard.
caring for kids on their own.
Sure.
Absolutely, and I think that there's definitely there's a good reason why women are in general more nervous about the economy. But the thing that I thought was funny was that in this report he said as kind of evidence that women were the big losers from this economic downturn, and this was about 9 months ago. So things have gotten so much worse since then. But there was this poll showing that women feel more anxiety. So I went and did a little digging and said, it doesn't surprise me that women feel more anxiety about the economy. And then what I saw was that in this poll, what Senator Kennedy didn't mention was that women feel more anxiety about everything. They're more worried about health care. They're more worried about terrorism. They're more worried about the environment. You name it, and women worry about it more than men do. And I think this doesn't come as a surprise to basically anyone. We all know that I think part of human nature is that women tend to be worriers, and there's some, as you just mentioned, there are some legitimate reasons why women have greater concerns when it comes to things like the economy. But I do
you think that, Carrie, speaking as a woman, do you think that that's because the Y chromosome has some worry thing attached to it, or do you think that that's because women tend to be the ones who are responsible for children? I mean, I have 3 children, but none of them came out of my body. I can't imagine what it must be like to have a child actually come out of me and say, wow, this literally is my flesh. I feel very protective toward my children, and anybody who threatened them, I would put myself between any of my children and a bullet or anything else. I'd do anything I could for them. But that said, I know that my wife feels that far more strongly than I do. And I think that that's just broadly speaking true. I mean, right across the board, you see divorces happen more often than not. Women take the children, and I don't think it's because we have a societal consensus about that. I think it's biology.
Yeah,
And
it's interesting. I tend to agree with you, and I think that you may get some angry feminist phone calls here any minute now. But I do think that certainly there is kind of a societal expectations, and I would never deny that nurture has a big part to play with it. But I do think that there's differences in biology that make women more concerned and more. There's now really fascinating research on differences between men and women's brains, and I think that makes a lot of people really uncomfortable because they assume that, gosh, well, this is going to be used as something to say that women are somehow inferior to men because women collect their thoughts in different centers of their
actually,
brain.
there's a lot of evidence that women are superior to men. They live longer than men. They're more emotionally resilient than men. They tolerate pain better than men, both physical and emotional pain. I mean, those are all well documented. Even the use of pain-killing drugs is less needed for women than for men.
I think that the bottom line is you don't have to say, one's superior or inferior, but there's a lot of reasons why women are different, and this worry gene, or this tendency to worry, I think probably is partially hardwired. And I think conservatives...
But it might just be part of the nurture instinct, the women as nurturers. And that being the case, the liberal worldview, as it were, the worldview of the founders of this country and the people who historically have concerned themselves with things like life, and the pursuit of happiness and the general welfare, to use phrases from the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Those are issues that are, according to your article anyway, arguably more women's issues than men's issues. And those are the issues that conservatives tend, not necessarily speaking of you, but I think you are discounting somewhat in your article, but conservatives tend to, if not ridicule, to diminish, to set aside, to say, oh, don't worry, the men who run the economy will take care of all that stuff. And, what about the role of government in saying, you're worried about the future of your children, you're worried about whether they'll get to college, you're worried about whether the economy, you're worried about if you're thrown out of work, you will have a roof over your head, or you'll have food to eat. Those are appropriate worries, and those are appropriate functions of government.
Well, I think that the thing that conservatives need to make the case is that government often creates problems instead of solves problems. So, for example, when you think about some workplace regulations right now that are designed supposedly to help women, and I think a lot of women hear about things like the call for mandates for paid family leave or paid sick leave, and you can bring out all sorts of really compelling stories of people, and you say, gosh, of course their employers need to give them a couple weeks off from work so they can take care of this personal business, and women tend to nod their heads. But the thing you don't see is the people who don't get jobs because of employment costs going up. And I know.
But Austria is not experiencing a huge unemployment problem. In fact, their unemployment is lower than the United States, and they have, isn't it mandatory 6 months off in Austria?
I'm not sure exactly what the law is. That's probably the case.
It typically is across the European Union, at least 6 months. In Denmark, it's a year.
Yeah, but there's often when you look at female unemployment, typically it is higher. And I think, Tom, there's so many things that go on in any economy that are going to be differences. But I think that you would agree with me that this basic idea, if you raise the cost of employment, it's going to make it. There's going to be fewer jobs. I think that's just like a rational. I don't know how
absolutely, and that's well. No, let me rephrase that. If you raise the cost of employment, or you diminish the labor market, what you're going to find is that the cost of labor is going to go up, which means that you're going to have a stronger middle class. And I would argue to you, Carrie, that the reason why there are fewer women in the workplace in many European countries has very little to do with discrimination against women. I mean, in Norway, half the parliament is female. You've got by law, as I recall, but rather that, as it was in the United States up until the 1980s and 90s, and I don't think this had anything to do with feminism or with the women's movement. I think it had to do with pure, raw economics. I don't think a woman working at McDonald's or working at Walmart is happy about that at all. It's that when we had single earner households in the United States, my dad worked, my mom didn't. If my dad lost his job, my mom could go to work and get a job. It might not pay anywhere near as much, but it still was enough to keep the family going. Now, when you got two earner jobs, if one person loses their job, it wipes the family out because there's not the margin of error that there used to be. There's not that extra person who can always go back into the workplace. I think it's a good thing to have single earner home households.
Oh, I agree. I agree with you there, but with our tax rates as they are, sometimes it's hard for people to do that. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I guess that's where we get back to, how the laws are organized. Carrie Lucas, IWF, the Independent Women's Forum, IWF.org. Carrie, can you stick around? I still want to get from you how conservatives can organize their message for women. I still don't understand this. Can you stick around for a minute?
Sure.
Okay,
Sure,
thank you.